Next, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has told the BBC that the small islands in the Pacific were facing an enormous environmental injustice. Guterres is in Tonga to attend the Pacific Islands Forum Leaders meeting. His warning came as the World Meteorological Organization said the Pacific Islands were facing a triple threat of warming waters, rise in sea levels and growing acidity because of carbon dioxide. Let's speak now to Rosanne Martyr, Senior Scientist at Climate Analytics Policy Institute. Thank you for coming on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
So just talk us through, I suppose, the specifics of the threats of global climate change. What are the specific threats to these countries?
Right. So the report that the UN Secretary General has highlighted shows that there's a risk posed by sea level rise globally and highlights the Pacific as a particularly vulnerable region. Atoll nations, the majority of which are located in the Pacific, are roughly 1 to 2 meters above sea level, and they are already feeling the devastating impacts of rising seas. In 2020, we saw some countries in the Pacific already lose 1% of their GDP to sea level rise damages. So sea level rise is having an impact now, and it's only going to get worse if we don't do more to reduce our emissions.
And is there anything that these countries can do themselves, or are they completely dependent on the rest of the world taking action?
So the UN Secretary General called out the G20 in this report, trying to highlight 2 things. The first is that sea level rise is not just a problem for small islands. The report shows that impacts to low-lying cities in major economies like London, New York City, Tokyo. So just because you're a big economy doesn't mean you're immune. But the second thing he is trying to point out is that roughly 80% of emissions come from the G20. That's just 20 countries, which are the world's largest economies. So when we talk about the kind of emissions reductions we need, we are looking to this small subset of governments to act with more urgency than they are now.
I see. And what's your assessment of the level of that urgency?
Well, we can look to where the climate commitments are now, and that roughly puts us on a path to 2.7 degrees of warming by the end of the 21st century. For small islands, this is not acceptable, and we need to look at putting us on a path that reduces warming as soon as possible, as much as possible, to keep us below 1.5 degrees. Otherwise, we're looking at potential tipping points in the climate system and irreversible damages for several of these small islands.
OK, we appreciate your time coming on and talking us through that. Rosanne Martyr, thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you for having me.